Ken Roczen has won almost everything you can win on a dirt bike. MX2 World Champion at 17, 2 outdoor titles, race wins across every format. But the one crown that defines American motocross greatness, the Monster Energy Supercross Championship, has never been his, and if it doesn't happen in 2026, it probably never will. This is about a deadline, a final window, the last realistic shot for one of the most naturally gifted riders of his generation to claim the only title that still matters to his legacy. Because after 2026, the math stops working. Age becomes a tax instead of a number. Recovery shrinks, speed becomes harder to access, and the riders coming up aren't slowing down. Ken Roczen arrived in American motocross as the chosen one. He'd already won the MX2 World Championship in 2011 at just 17 years old, beating riders who'd spent their entire careers preparing for that moment. When he landed in the US in 2011, he immediately won races. His riding style was European smooth, efficient, almost effortless. No wasted energy, just flow. That's what made him different. Most riders look fast because they're working hard. Roczen looked fast because he wasn't. He'd carry momentum through sections where other riders were braking and accelerating, using terrain and rhythm to maintain speed without ever looking rushed. If you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit subscribe and stay in the gate with us for the next breakdown. Back to the video. By 2014, he'd shocked the sport by winning his first ever 450 Supercross race at Anaheim 1, the season opener, as a rookie. He finished third overall that year, then won his first 450 outdoor title, beating Ryan Dungey. In 2016, he finished second in Supercross with 5 wins, then dominated outdoors again with 9 victories and his second championship. The timeline was obvious. Roczen would rack up multiple Supercross titles, dominate outdoors, and retire as one of the greatest riders the sport had ever seen. And then the arm injury happened, and the entire timeline collapsed. January 21, 2017. Anaheim 2. Roczen went down in the main event, and his left arm took the full impact. Compound fracture of the radius, dislocated elbow, dislocated wrist, and a list of ligaments and nerves that don't heal the way bone does. The initial diagnosis was bad. The complications were worse. Compartment syndrome meant he was at risk of losing the arm entirely. Nerve damage doesn't just mean pain, it means loss of signal. Your brain tells your hand to grip and nothing happens. Or it happens too late. Or it happens with half the strength you expected. Most career-ending injuries in motocross are about speed. Riders come back slower, or they can't push through pain, or they lose the edge that made them elite. Roczen's injury was different. He didn't lose speed, he lost reliability. The connection between his brain and his handlebar, the thing that makes a rider smooth, precise, instinctive, was compromised. You can't think your way through that. You either rewire the entire system or you're done. Roczen chose to rewire. Multiple surgeries, at least 11 in the first year. Experimental nerve treatments, a cadaver radial head transplant. Months of trying to relearn how to hold a handlebar without his hand going numb or losing grip mid-corner. And when he finally came back in 2018, he wasn't the same rider. Not because he was slower, because he couldn't trust his own body anymore. That's the invisible part of the injury. The results looked okay, but the rider behind them was fighting his own nervous system every lap. I've linked a few items related to this video in the description and pinned comment. If you're curious, check them out. Now let's get back to the story. Then, in February 2018, barely back to racing, Roczen crashed again at San Diego. His right hand got pulled into Cooper Webb's rear wheel. Shattered bones, dislocated metacarpals, torn ligaments. Out for the rest of Supercross. He made it back for outdoors and finished third, but the career clock didn't just pause during recovery, it aged him. When Roczen returned, he was technically the same age, but his body had already been through a war. And in Supercross, where consistency across 17 rounds is everything, one compromised system, whether it's a wrist, a knee, or a nerve cluster, can be the difference between a title and 5th place. That injury stole the years when winning one would have been inevitable. Supercross is the test. It's the format that decides who gets remembered and who gets forgotten. Outdoor motocross rewards raw speed, fitness, and the ability to suffer for 30+2. Supercross rewards precision, racecraft, and the ability to execute under pressure in front of 60,000 people every Saturday night for 4 months straight. That's why outdoor titles don't carry the same weight. Roczen has 2 of them, 2014 and 2016, but they don't define his legacy the way a Supercross championship would, because Supercross is where American motocross culture lives. It's where McGrath, Carmichael, Stewart, Villopoto, and Dungey built their legacies. It's the series that gets the TV time, the sponsorship dollars, and the historical memory. If you don't have a Supercross #1 plate, you're not in the conversation for greatest of all time. You're just very good, and that's the problem. Roczen has been very good for over a decade. Multiple race wins, podiums, consistent top 5 finishes, but Supercross doesn't reward talent, it punishes imperfection. Roczen's career has been defined by those small margins, close championships, late season injuries, races where he had the speed but not the result. In 2016, he finished second to Ryan Dungey. In 2021, he finished second again, this time to Cooper Webb. And every year that passes without a Supercross title, the narrative gets heavier. At some point, it stops being bad luck. It starts being a pattern. That's why 2026 matters, because if it doesn't happen now, the pattern becomes permanent. Roczen is 31 years old. He'll turn 32 in April 2026. In most sports, that's prime. In Supercross, it's late. Not because riders lose speed at 31, because recovery shrinks. A crash that takes 3 days to shake off at 25 takes a week at 31. A strained shoulder that you could ride through in 2018 sidelines you for 2 rounds in 2026. You can still hit lap times, you can still qualify up front, but the cumulative damage of a 17-round season, where every practice session, heat race, and main event adds another layer of fatigue, and when that happens, consistency disappears. You go from podium threat to mid-pack in 3 weekends, not because you got slower, but because your body couldn't hold the line. Roczen knows this. His riding style has shifted over the past 2 seasons. Not dramatically, but noticeably. He's not attacking every section anymore. He's picking his moments, managing risk, riding smarter instead of harder. In 2025, he held the red plate early in the season after Anaheim 2 led points for multiple rounds and won Daytona for the first time in 11 attempts. But then came the Nashville crash in April 2024, a catastrophic shock failure in the whoops that sent him flying. Broken tibial plateau, foot, and toe, out for the rest of Supercross. Another season cut short. At this stage of his career, making it to round 17 healthy is more important than winning round 3. And here's the critical part. That strategy can still work. Experience can still outweigh physical decline. For now. Roczen has 14 years of Supercross-level racecraft. He knows how to read starts, manage traffic, and execute under pressure. He's raced against Dungey, Tomac, Musquin, Webb, Anderson, and Sexton at their peaks. That database of knowledge doesn't disappear. It's still an advantage, but that advantage has an expiration date. In 2027, Roczen will be 32. The riders coming up, Jet Lawrence, Hunter Lawrence, Hayden Deegan, will be faster, hungrier, and recovering better. The window where Roczen's experience can offset the physical cost of racing Supercross is closing. Not closed, but closing. That's why 2026 is different. This is probably the last season where the equation still works in his favor. If Ken Roczen wins a Supercross title in 2026, it would be a verdict. A final answer to the question that's followed him since 2017. Was the injury the only thing that stopped him from being one of the greats, or was he always going to fall short? Right now, Roczen exists in legacy limbo. He's too accomplished to be forgotten, but he doesn't have the one result that locks him into the pantheon. You can't tell the story of the 2010s Supercross without mentioning him, but you also can't build the story around him the way you can with Dungey or Tomac. He's part of the era, not the center of it. A title changes that immediately, completely, because it wouldn't just be about the points, it would be about the context. A rider who lost years to injury, who rebuilt his career from nerve damage, who fought through a decade of close calls and painful almosts, and then, at 31, in what might be his last real shot, delivered. That's one of the great comeback stories in American motocross history. It would put Roczen in a different category. Not with the riders who dominated untouched, but with the riders who had to earn it twice. The ones who refused to let an injury or bad luck define them. The ones who stayed in the fight long enough to get the ending they deserved. But here's the other side of it. If he doesn't win, the what-if becomes permanent. And at that point, it doesn't matter how many races he won or how smooth his style was. The story becomes about the title he never got. about the rider who had everything except the one thing that mattered. Let us know what you think in the comments section. Now, if you want to know where Roczen ranks among the sport's most polarizing figures, watch the 6 most loved and hated riders in motocross history explained next. You'll see why some legends are worshipped while others can't escape the controversy. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.